And we are live for the Steelers Depot question and answer live stream here on Monday, July 12th. As always, I am Alex Kozora. Alongside me, Dave Bryan. I know it's been a couple weeks since our last live stream. I was out of town this past week, so we had to move things to tonight. But thank you guys for being here. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us as training camp is just about 2 weeks away. Dave, how you doing? Thank you so much. Yeah, really excited to be back, and a lot of news. Already so much to talk about here, and I know we haven't, had a live stream since a lot of Steelers news has broken, including the David DeCastro release, the Trey Turner signing, etc., the training camp announcements, and things like that. So you guys know the drill. If you have been here before, you guys can ask questions for Dave and I for the next hour. We'll try to answer as many and hopefully all of them. If you want to have your question be guaranteed to be asked and answered, be sure to send us a super chat and you will move to the front of the line. So let's dive right into the questions today and let me know if there's any sort of issue with the audio or anything like that. You should be okay. But we'll start off with Mike Adesso, who's a very loyal viewer of the site and the channel. Appreciate that. He says, say Colbert wants to work a trade late preseason with not many later round picks next year for Pitt. Any position of strength they could trade from, maybe at wide receiver with Washington. So, Dave, is there any player or position group they could look to trade from for some sort of August type of trade?
A 1 year rental deal. I mean, what kind of value is that going to come with there? Sixth, maybe fifth or sixth at most. And why would you trade away experience depth on that? I never have understood, the idea unless you have, a totally frustrated player and a real reason to unload a player.
Wait,
I
hold
just
on one
don't see
second, Dave. Is there audio for Dave? It should be good. Let me know. I changed one setting, so you guys good now? Okay, good now. So I'm sorry, Dave. Go ahead.
All right, did they hear all that or no?
They probably missed the first like 30 seconds. So just kind of summarize what
Oh,
you
okay.
just said.
All right. Well, I mean, plain and simple. James Washington doesn't have any real trade value. A player in the final year of his contract right now. Not a whole lot of production. He would essentially be a 1 year rental to a team. So, what would you get him? What kind of value would you be essentially giving a team in that? I mean,
Hmm.
it'd be like a fifth or sixth round value at the most, and I just don't understand the idea of trading away experience depth like that, especially if you can't get premium value.
Right.
James Washington has more value to the Steelers on their roster, on their 53-man roster in 2021 than he does being traded away, I believe, especially if the
Hmm.
value is only like a sixth or seventh round draft pick. So, no, I don't see this team has any real depth uh, you know, depth that's worth trading away as part of some sort of deal. And on top of it, how many times do you see Colbert trade
Right.
away a player at this time of year? On top of it, so I will be absolutely shocked if not if they trade for a player, but if they send somebody away as part of that deal. It's
Hmm.
just that's just not what they usually do.
Yeah, I think it's unlikely. I think it's possible. I mean, it has happened before, and they don't really have the future draft capital to trade. No fourth round pick, no fifth round pick as of this moment, unless they want to trade, a sixth or seventh. I mean, then you're without fourth, fifth, and sixth. Yes, there are projected comp picks, but you never know exactly how that's going to go. How about defensive line? I mean, not all those guys are going to make the team. Could an Isaiah Buggs or someone like that who gets the short end of the straw be dealt? I guess that's possible. I don't know exactly what you're going to get for that guy, but I suppose maybe some sort of low level player swap.
I mean, I don't even at this point I don't even see Bugs as even worth a seventh round draft pick. I mean,
Yeah.
but I mean, uh, could you if something happens and you like some of your development, maybe a Wormley,
Yeah.
maybe you could trade away a Chris Wormley for a seventh round draft pick or something along those lines. But once again, the the devil that I think is worth a lot more to you than dealing something like that away. And once again, I would be absolutely shocked if this team trade somebody. Even look at somebody like Jalen Samuels.
Right.
Really, what kind of worth does he have? I mean, maybe, just maybe, a seventh round value there. Benny Snell. I mean, is Benny Snell worth getting a fifth or sixth back versus what he might can offer you as a backup
Hmm.
and a special teams player? You know, I know it's kind of, this is the Madden world that we live in and all, but I just don't see any value in really trading away any of those guys.
Yeah, and the last style bender says they 100 can trade Johnson or Washington for a cornerback like Gilmore. Give me that any day. Well, James Washington is not getting dealt for stuff on Gilmore, and I guess Deontay Johnson could, but I mean that starts getting to the Madden realm of trades. Just simply have no chance of happening.
Yeah, I mean, it feels very Madden-esque,
Yeah.
there. And Gilmore, I mean, what's Gilmore's salary right now on top of it? I mean, you're not gonna, are you gonna really trade for a guy that carries that kind of salary? I mean, that's not what the Steelers really do that way too.
Yeah, a lot of people trying to push the Gilmore trade this offseason. I don't know why, where
I
it's
don't
coming from.
understand
It's
it.
just the boredom of it, obviously. But seen that kick up a lot. There's no legs to it, of course, for people listening. All right, let me find out.
Gilmore has a $7 million base salary in 2021. So, I mean, you cut Steven Nelson, to trim, seven something, whatever million that
Hmm.
was there, and you're going to turn around and get a
Yeah,
31-year-old Stephon Gilmore on a 1-year rental.
and
I
trading
mean,
something to do that. Yeah.
and trading something to do that, that just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. Good point. Mike Des also says, Dave, love the show with Joel Corey on. That was good stuff and fun nerding out. Yeah, listen to that. You guys did a great job. Great questions, great answers, insight that I think only Joel Corey can bring from that perspective as a former NFL agent. So appreciate him and the rest of the crew filling in for me last week.
Yeah, he look. I mean, anytime I get Joel Corey on the show, it's fun. You get all these questions that we add up over the years. And you and I talk on a podcast. We say that's something we need to make sure we ask Joel Corey about. And then come time that you actually have him on, you start wondering what the hell was all those questions I was going to ask Joel Corey. And also, you don't want to eat up too much of his time. I think I did good to get 30 minutes out of him. And I think we got a lot of good information in that 30 minutes, in that 30 minutes time as well too. So always blessed to have him on, and you won't be the last time.
For sure, for sure. Mario says Pirates had themselves a draft, hoping they all sign. Yeah, it sounds like it. That one guy's going to Clemson, or was supposed to go to Clemson, had committed. It sounds like he's going to sign with the Pirates, and so yeah, had a good draft. Sounds good. That positive news there for the Pittsburgh Pirates, I should say. Let's see. Mark Miller says, "Can you go over some of the dates for upcoming reports from camp? Any special dates?" Yeah, let me go ahead and pull up the camp schedule, which was released last week. Dave has a nice graphic here for you guys. First practice will be July 20th. The first one open to the public. At least I believe it's actually gonna be a padded practice, so they probably will have one or two before that that'll be closed off to the public, unfortunately. But that is the date of the first practice. There is supposed to be a Friday practice for the 30th. That's to be determined. That might be the night practice, this year's version of Friday Night Lights, I guess maybe. But other than that, there aren't really any particular marquee dates along this group. But there are 12 practices open to the public, and we have tickets for all 12. So, barring anything unforeseen, we will be there and have camp reports for all 12 at Heinz Field. All right, next question here is from Reginald Rivers. How many undrafted players will make this roster? I think maybe you or someone had asked that question before, and it's impossible to give an answer sitting here in the middle of July. I think this undrafted class, though, this group of guys was one of the stronger groups that they've assembled in several seasons. So I'll say at least one makes it, and of course, it could be one of those DBs, whether that's a Shakur Brown, who's probably the favorite right now, or Lamont Wade, Donovan Steiner, Mark Gilbert, someone like that. But I do think someone will make it because depth is thin at some positions, especially in the secondary. And there's enough talent there that I think someone emerges on special teams, makes splash plays in camp, injuries, whatever the case is. One of those guys will find their way on the 53.
Yeah, you would probably bet on just on numbers alone because so many of them were defensive backs, right? I
Right.
mean,
Half of them.
uh, I like the chances of at least one of them, and I think Shakir Brown probably a good if you lay your money down and list odds on these guys, I would think Shakir Brown would probably have the lowest odds of the group, meaning that he would kind of be the favorite there. Beyond that, I mean, obviously anything can happen, and we've seen that anything can happen. That's why Alex has always, been a fan of saying, let's just not call these guys camp bodies,
Hmm.
because uh, if it's going to be somebody other than, let's say, a Shakir Brown, I mean, obviously we'd have to make a mark in special teams, because even look back to last year at James Pierre, and how much of a long shot he was with no off-season program, and no preseason. His ability to make plays in practice, and I'm sure he probably had Danny Smith smiling quite a bit as well there. So if you're going to make your mark as an undrafted free agent and make this roster, you're probably going to have some special teams
Hmm.
ability there. And then once again, with so many of these guys this year being defensive backs, I think that's where Shakir Brown becomes kind of the favorite there. I'll go with one. I'll go with
Okay.
Shakir Brown. That's it.
Yeah, no, I think even Brown or any of these undrafted guys, the path is always special teams first, unless there are just so many injuries or your player is just so absurdly good that an undrafted guy is playing out of the gate almost very unlikely to happen. So that has to be the path to making the team. And actually, I talked to Steelers player development coordinator today, Darrell Young, and he was a fullback in Washington, and he cut his teeth on special teams, and he told me a great story about how he kind of made the roster and made the team through that path. So be on the lookout for that. But that will be the path for all these guys, Shakir Brown included. Let's see. Next question here comes from Michael. Says, "What in God's name is going on with Devin Bush? Is he okay?" I know that you guys on the roundtable on the Table podcast this past week, Dave, talked about it a lot. I don't pay a lot of attention to it. I'm not really concerned by it. It's not something I think that's great for him or like he should be doing, I guess, but I don't put a lot of stock or really lose any sleep over it. But I know you've given your take on the podcast, but just kind of reiterate that stance here.
Yeah, just look, it's erratic, and it's Dr. Mel is the most recent one. It was the subject of her terrible take on Sunday there, but it's just, it's out of character, is what it is. And really, I mean, if he's trolling, okay, he's trolling, all right. But I mean, even if he's trying to troll or whatever that way, and this is a guy that's poised to be your defensive captain down the line here. This is a guy that's in his third season now. This is a guy that you expect to be the quarterback of your defense. Those kind of things there. Uh, Optics wise, and look, I mean, yeah, look, it's social media. You can't tell people what to tweet and what not to tweet, and how to build a brand. I do think building a brand for a player, if they do it smartly, is a wise thing to do.
Hmm.
Because I mean, look, I mean, yeah, you're not guaranteed hardly anything in this league here, and you could be gone out of this league before you know it. So I think you got to strike while the iron's hot, and if that means building your brand and pocketing a couple of million that way, you got to do what you got to do. As long as obviously it doesn't become a disruption to the team. I think some of what Bush has, it feels like it's becoming some sort of a distraction to some degree. Here's the thing: when he gets into training camp, I mean, he's got to be asked about this, right? I
Sure.
mean, to some degree, and it's going to be interesting to see if indeed he is asked about, what's all transpired here, what his answer is, how he goes about handling and whatnot. I mean, there's nothing inherently wrong with a person tweeting. Now, obviously, people get upset with some of that subject matter, which was kind of distasteful. I think in my opinion there,
Hmm.
but uh, he's not broken any laws, So it'll be interesting to watch play. I think overall, my concern is man, this is erratic and it's so unlike him. That's where my concern
Yeah.
lays right now.
Yeah, if I was a teammate, I would definitely check in on him, make sure he was okay. And it seemed like some teammates were Vince Williams, Zach Banner, guys like that. And Bush tweeted, and we don't know exactly what it means, but he said the boys find him. I don't know if that was I'd sound like his teammates saying something to him, at least in some respect. But is it a distraction? It's a story, but I think it's a story because it's July and there's nothing else going on. If we were in the middle of camp or the season or something, it'd be such a minor story because there'd be 800 other things, more important things to talk about. So unless he says
Yeah, but
something,
when you land on the New York Post,
yeah, but
website,
who cares?
and you
Like,
make
who
it read
cares?
that way because of it's not so much that he landed there. It's just because of you know, a lot had to do with with the subject matter. I think of that one video.
Sure,
So
yeah, that's inappropriate.
that's when it becomes the story, not the fact that it's just the fact that it's in the post. It's because it's in the post because of that kind of subject matter is what's the most damning. If he was just tweeting his life away and not making sense on Twitter and that ended up in the post, that's one thing I think. But
Right.
because of the subject matter landing him there the way it did, that's when it becomes, in my opinion, the story.
Yeah, but it was just one retweet, I believe. I didn't follow it as closely as I'm sure you did, but that's all. I
Yeah,
mean, it
but
was just
he liked. I mean, he liked. He at one point he had liked a unsavory porn video.
okay.
So there was that. But
Was that does that
other than
distract
that,
the team? I don't know. I don't think it's a distraction for the team.
no, I mean inherently overall you can like and tweet whatever you want. Like I said, he didn't do anything illegal. It's just that those kind of things is when it becomes the story,
Hmm.
and that's what those kind of things are what land you in the post. The post isn't going to write a story about, oh, Devin Bush just didn't sound like himself tweeting out this, that, and the other. And boy, you ought to seen the funny video of the dog begging or whatever. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying?
Sure, sure.
That kind of stuff's not going to land you in the post, right?
Right. Yeah, but I mean that's all just tabloid stuff and it's low hanging fruit. And I mean, again, I think you should check on him, make sure he's okay. It sounds like teammates have, and obviously it's not like I'm like, yeah, that's a great thing you should do. And I don't think it's good for his brand if he is trying to build this brand. That seems to be counterintuitive to it. But end of the day, I think it's a story that just is mainly a story because it's July and there's no other football news going on right now. All right, next question here. Let's see, comes from John Pennington. Good to hear from you, John. Says hello, Dave and Alex, and hope Alex is rested. I am. What do you guys know about Collins and Coyle? He's talking about the offensive lineman Avante Collins and Anthony Coyle. We don't know a ton about those guys. Collins was signed as a futures contract this offseason, was with the Vikings, had played guard, had played tackle. We'll see where the Steelers align him. A good athlete that may fit some of that zone stuff. The Steelers probably will emphasize more this year. And Coyle's a tackle who got a cup of coffee, dressed a little bit last season, some of the COVID elevations and things like that, but just has very limited playtime overall. And I don't think I've seen him in camp yet, since there was no camp to the public last season. So we'll hopefully get eyes on him this year and provide a better report on his game. But seems like a versatile guy. He's played tackle, and I think you said maybe a little bit of guard. You maybe spotted him in one photo of him playing a little bit of guard in OTAs.
Yeah, that was one of the most I think intriguing kind of super sleuth things to come out of maybe some of those pictures that we got throughout the off season program is maybe Coyle got a little bit of work at guard.
Hmm.
Collins, I don't think there's much there to be honest with you. This is a guy that has played a little bit of tackle, and then I think the before he was out with the Vikings, got a little bit of work at guard there. Uh, Practice squad, I would think at best, and really, Coyle's the same way. But the fact that Coyle did last, I think pretty much all of last season on the practice squad, and even had an elevation or three in
Hmm.
there. That makes him intriguing in and of itself, just because he was that next guy up. Now, obviously, to make the 53-man roster, he's going to have a lot of help in a lot of different areas. Some that you don't even like mentioning because it's negative based. Obviously being injuries and along those lines there. So I would
Hmm.
think best case scenario probably for Coyle is also practice squad. I think something's gone extremely bad if either Coyle or Collins winds up on the 53-man roster. Either that or they've just played absolutely
Right.
lights out during a preseason, and I just don't see that happening there. So I think best case scenario both for both those players mentioned is practice squad, and quite honestly, I could see one making it and not the other.
Yeah, I'm with you, Dave. I want to jump ahead just briefly here to a question the last Stylebender had, who asked when is the Hall of Fame game? As you can hopefully see on this tweet here, August 5th will be the first game of the 2021 season for the NFL, the Hall of Fame game between Pittsburgh and Dallas. So Thursday, August 5th on Fox. So there you go.
And we'll
Uh,
have that thing charted within
we will.
24 hours. We'll have it all broken down. I will probably have watched it 5 times. I mean, that's how starved up that we are. I think for preseason football and football in general, those kind of things. So yeah, you can. We will overanalyze that game probably more than we should. But
Yep.
hey, that's what we do.
First preseason game in 2 years, so we're gonna savor it. Really
All right.
excited for it for sure. Mark Miller, is there an edge rusher that could be dropped in training camp that might be willing to take a 1 year deal with the Steelers? Let me pull up Tom's article. He's done a good job this offseason, kind of going through seven, X position offensive linemen, cornerbacks, edge rushers who could be on the radar of guys who are on rosters right now. I think he did one with edge, yeah, right here back in June. So I'll kind of just scroll through that. I don't have any names in particular. I kind of wait through the preseason, who does well, injuries, those kind of things. But he mentions Daryl Johnson of the Bills, Ben Banigou, which I think is a really good name, good pull there from Tom. Steelers love the pedigree. Had interest in Banigou coming out of TCU. He's kind of on the bubble with the Colts right now, so that makes a lot of sense. They drafted some defensive linemen, I think, in Paye and maybe somebody else this draft class. Bradley Anae from Dallas. Osman from Philadelphia, Steven Means from Atlanta, Noah Spence, pedigree guy as well from the Saints, and Kylie Fitz from Arizona. So there are some names there, but I'll pay more attention to that based on how the guys in house develop with Marsh and Roche and anybody else, and then what everything else looks like during the course of the preseason.
And look, I know everybody's hot on the whole Justin Houston and Melvin Ingram and stuff like that, but I mean, just you look back at the history of Kevin Colbert, and barring an injury happening to someone like T.J. Watt and Alex Highsmith, I mean, it's just not the Kevin Colbert's mo to go out and get a 30 or older player as a backup. For one thing, you're not going to get a guy like Justin Houston or Ingram to play on special teams, and that's usually something the Steelers require of their of their backup linebackers there. So I do think still. I mean, I don't think you can go into season with Cassius Marsh and Quincy Roach being those guys. Although Quincy Roche, we're going to have to see. What he can show obviously during training camp and the preseason there. I mean, obviously Alex Highsmith was able to get meaningful snaps kind of right out of the chute as a rookie, but Highsmith comes to the Steelers a little bit higher pedigree than Roche, even though Roche probably should have been drafted a little bit higher there. Just I view Quincy Roche as being a lot more kind of rawer than say an Alex Highsmith was there. But I mean, I personally I don't think you can go into the season with the depth chart the way it is right now. So I would expect somebody at some point to be brought in to be kind of a more of a true number three. And if you decide that you want to keep a guy like Cassius Marsh, you do so because he's the number four, and primarily because he can be a core special teams
Mhm.
guy for you in all four phases.
Yeah, I think there certainly will be a desire and an appetite to look outside the organization. The question is just by which method, because is it going to be a cut down guy right before the season? Is it going to be a trade, draft capital, a little light right now? Will it be a free agent? The list is limited, and the guys who are available, like Houston and Ingram, are going to be tough to sign for the reasons you mentioned. So, again, I think they take the same approach they did back in, I always forget the year 2016, 2017, I think actually it was, with Jesse James, and they had Grimble, and see how those guys looked in camp, and they didn't play too well, and then that kind of compelled them to trade for Vance McDonald. So I think probably someone at cutdowns is the most likely avenue right now, but we'll see how the internal guys look and go from there. Got a super chat here, a very generous one from Double HH. Always a big fan, always a loyal viewer here in these live streams. He says the statistical research you guys did regarding Ben's foot toe was comprehensive. Hope Ben read that. If the Steelers haven't already warned him previously, yeah, Dave, I think we'll talk about that on the podcast tomorrow. Kudos to the whole Steelers Depot crew. That was certainly not a one man job. It was an everyman job to compile the data and charting through. And I never thought I'd look at Ben's feet as much as I did over the weekend. But interesting stuff. There certainly is a tell there. There's no denying that. And I think it's something you can certainly, potentially hurt this team to some degree. But considering how late the tell seems to happen, usually right before the snap. I don't think it's that big of a deal. And so when you watch it in the video as opposed to just reading about it or seeing still shot photos, it makes a big difference. So I don't think it's the tell, the big giveaway that some people are making it out to be.
I posted about that this last after the week
Right.
one game
Yeah. It's
last
also not
season.
new information.
Yeah, it's not new. I tweeted that out after the week one game last season against the Giants. There, it's not new information. Just didn't really figure it was that big of a deal to kind of follow up with. And obviously, when the TikTok story came out or whatever, and the way it blew up, the way this came about is, I basically told Alex, I said, look, we probably need to follow up on this. We probably need to get as comprehensive and go through all the snaps and basically, I mean, it was all the research was done, I think, well within a 24-hour period,
Yeah.
wasn't it,
Saturday,
Alex?
Saturday afternoon to Sunday afternoon. So yeah, 24 hours.
I mean, we all took a handful of games and went through and charted it and shotgun snaps only. And we had an idea of probably what we were going to find. It's just you have to have the tape verify all of that. So we all compiled our numbers. We sent them over to Alex. Alex put them in the table that you see in the post there. And I think that I think the main conclusion, I think Alex has this right in there too, is overall because of when this is happening in relation to the snap of the football. It's so hard for I think defenses to kind of key on that because there's so many other kind of keys that defenses are looking
Hmm.
for pre-snap. Now, is that not to say that occasionally, especially my biggest concern really is the ones where Ben kind of squares up his feet more than anything and basically tells that it's the run
Yep. I agree.
more so than it's the pass because I mean that's more of an obvious tell there. And if I'm a defensive lineman or a defensive end as the game goes on, uh, I'm I'm if I see Ben do that, I have enough time to kind of react. I'm playing to run a little bit harder than I am getting after the quarterback. I'm not going up that edge as hard.
Hmm.
So but I mean, obviously, look, we've looked back at some of the stuff dating all the way back to his rookie season as well, too. This is not new,
Right.
and if we're seeing this stuff and charting it and all like that, I guarantee you the Steelers know it to some degree. I mean, it's more of an issue outside of the organization that I think people probably know. Now, you can bet for sure now that we've gone through and charted all this and did this, we're going to pay a lot more closer attention to this as the season starts to see if indeed if there's any kind of change. But I mean, even Alex went on to chart Mason in that week 17 game, found a little bit of a trend there. I mean, if we went across the league,
Hmm.
what would we find? You know, uh, it's tough to say there, but I think people are making a bigger deal out of this than what it is. However, especially when it comes to the kind of the running plays
Yeah.
there, it would be a little bit easier, I think, to kind of cheat that, if you will.
Right. Yeah, I don't want to say it's a non-story or it's a complete nothing burger, whatever the phrase is, because I think there is something there. It is a tell. I mean, straight up. I mean, the premise is absolutely correct. But I think you're right, Dave, that it's more of an issue with the run game than the pass game. It's not even because the Ben's foot is flat, but I kind of have the photo here. It's kind of you can see in this photo against the Giants week one last year. It's kind of pivoted and turned out, and it's going to help him pivot to hand the football off. And so I think some of the weight distribution and just where the placement of the foot is kind of more important than if it's flat or if it's lifted. But generally speaking, for the reasons I mentioned in the post, that it's not the big tell. Usually you want tells that are more obvious, more immediate stuff where a guy lines up initially and you can figure it out. Ben's had worse tells than this. Remember the old grabbing the face mask
Oh
thing for
yeah,
AB? Like
yeah.
that was an obvious tell that you would find out seconds, several seconds before the snap, and Antonio Brown would always mess with his gloves on pass plays and stuff like that. So I don't think this is a huge story, but there is something there, and we'll see if they want to make any adjustments. But Ben has seemed to do this for his entire career, and he's a Hall of Fame two-time Super Bowl winning quarterback. So I think it's going okay for him. So, but we'll be watching for it for sure. All right, let me get back to the questions here. X Eddie B says, "Is it weird that no one wants Nelson now? Probably his asking price." Yeah, he made some allusions to that on Twitter about the asking price. I mean, the rumors are there's interest. The Eagles seem to have some decent level of interest in him, but I think it's a financial concern right now. He'll sign somewhere probably next couple of weeks if I had to guess. Simon says, which, that's funny to say. Simon says, which training camp battle are you most excited to see play out this summer? I think there's a lot of good ones. Again, secondary offensive line are the two primary spots that I'm really keeping a close eye on. But I think the center job, Kendrick Green versus BJ Finney versus maybe even JC Hassenauer. Can Green be the talent and the player the team drafted him to be? And can he do that right away? I think he's the most talented guy by far of those three, but is he going to be day one ready as a guy who didn't play a ton of center at Illinois and was a junior coming out and all those kind of things working against him? So just kind of the veteran guys, Finney, the veteran established guy, Hassenauer, the guy with a team last year versus the newcomer, the most talented guy in Kendrick Green. I think that'll be a really interesting battle.
Yeah, I think that obviously will be a good one. Who's going to be the nickel?
Hmm.
How is that going to play out? Not so much maybe a position battle, but to see a player specifically to see what exactly the team does with James Pierre. He's had the most buzz about him since going all the way back I think to week 16 or 17 of last season and all like that. Definitely a player intriguing. What's going to happen at the bottom end, players number 52, 53 kind of things there. Shakir Brown, we talked about earlier. Uh, uh, in this live stream and all like that. I think that's a curious guy to watch there. What's going to happen? Are people making more about a potential battle between, let's say, Benny Snell and Kalen Ballage than what's actually there? To hear, if you go back and all the things that Mike Tomlin has said about Benny Snell and getting excited about Benny Snell football, I mean, to me, from where I sit right now, until I see any training camp reports or preseason, I personally kind of find it hard to fathom that Benny Snell will get beaten out by a guy like Kalen Ballage. To be quite honest with you, but stranger things have indeed happened than that. So there are going to be a lot of different back ends roster stories because look, I mean, there 6 7 positions easily or can probably still be claimed at this point.
Yeah, Snell versus Balaj is interesting because they're pretty similar guys. Balaj is taller, but they're bigger. They're more power type of backs. But they really shown well on special teams. They really carved out good value there, running down kicks and punts, and especially on punts. I think Snell's done a good job at the wing. So that'll be interesting. But there's also potentially room for four guys when you're talking Harris, McFarland, Snell, and Balaj, plus Derek Watts. So that is possible. They kept four running backs last year. So all those guys could be on the roster potentially based on just how the roster breaks. I had a question here. I think it was Shaquille Gregory asking if Trey Turner has a number yet. Not according to the Steelers site. So if he has a number, we do not know it yet. Hopefully, we'll know that sooner than later, but not known yet. Shaquille.
There's not many he can choose from, and
Mm,
I kind of doubt they're going to give him 66.
yeah.
Right.
Right. Well, I
Uh,
mean,
uh,
Dupree. I mean, uh, who got it from Dupree? Who has 48 right now? Someone's wearing 48. Roche's wearing 48.
mm.
I mean, Dupree and Nakasha, Nakasha had a longer career and all that, but yeah, and he can't wear Turner can't wear 70. Obviously, that's retired. So we'll see what he takes.
Yeah, gonna be interesting.
Mark Ralston, what position do you think would be worse for the Steelers to lose a starter? In your opinion, seems like there are a few potential answers, which is a problem for depth. I mean, aside putting quarterback aside for the second, because that's always a choice for like 31 or 32 teams. Probably just Minka. If Minka ever went down, how do you replace a free safety with that kind of range? I mean, he was the defense transformed for a reason as soon as they acquired Minka in 2019. And to lose him with no obvious replacement, I don't know how you would do that. It changes your coverage. It just changes your splash plays. It hurts the pressure you're going to generate up front and being opportunistic behind it. So losing Minka to me would just be obviously devastating for this team.
Yeah, I don't think you want to go through another season without Devin Bush, right?
Right.
Your quarterback of your defense, and if, for obviously a former first round draft pick, a guy that you think can really make a difference in the middle of that defense. I mean, already a little bit of questions about maybe who's going to play alongside him, in some base situations here, and to lose him on top of that again would be brutal. I mean, you could go through all this, the entire both sides of the football, and probably pick out, four guys, five guys on each side, and say, well, it wouldn't go great if this happened. But I mean, you could probably do that. You go around to every NFL team in the salary cap era as well too. Say, boy, this team is doomed for if X goes down. But yeah, I mean, look, I mean, Minka, such a playmaker on the back end. You'd hate to see that. My top two outside of the obvious of being, a guy like Najee or Roethlisberger, something along those lines. I mean, I think it would have to be Minka and Devin Bush.
Right. And obviously people say TJ Watt, and that would be, knock on wood.
Sure,
Hopefully it
that,
doesn't
I mean
happen.
that is obvious. Some of these are just so obvious.
Right, but I think,
Uh,
and I think I'm in the minority here, but I don't want to lose either guy, but I think this team could handle the loss of T.J. Watt easier than they could handle the loss of Minka Fitzpatrick, just because it's a defense that's schemed and built about being able to generate pressure. It's not one that generates taking the football away and making the plays that Minka is capable of making.
let's not find out.
That's probably the correct answer. Above all, AJC, has there been that many Steelers retire in the same offseason? Well, how many have retired so far? Technically, just one, right? Pouncey.
McDonald, I mean,
Oh, okay,
Vance
yeah,
didn't he?
Vance, right? Yeah, well, he was getting cut. I mean, he didn't
Right.
get fired. He quit. What kind of deal there? DeCastro, of course, could retire and like things like that. But I mean, the '70s, when the '70s dynasty broke up, I know those guys weren't all together. Swan was earlier, Bradshaw in the middle, Starworth later. Franco went to Seattle. We try to forget that kind of stuff. But I'm sure when that group broke up, it probably felt as weird as anything.
Yeah, more pronounced though because of, as long as a lot of those guys had been together,
Right.
or earlier in the the '70s dynasty and all like that. Uh, well, I can't remember the last time. Maybe two. I mean, they usually get cut first. They don't.
Right.
They don't just go retire. They usually get cut first.
Yeah, yeah. So been a very definitely a transformative offseason though in a lot of ways for sure. So I get the question there, AJC. Last style bender says, will Tua attend the Hall of Fame game? I know he didn't go to OTAs for personal reasons, of course. I mean, I can't say that for sure. I imagine he'll be there for training camp day one. I think enough time has passed, but obviously I'm not gonna make those decisions or, try to speculate too much about that. But to answer your question, yes, I think he'd be at the Hall of Fame game, and yes, I think he'll be there for day one of camp.
Yeah, I think Tuitt will be there. Now, whether or not he plays in a Hall of Fame game,
Right.
I don't necessarily feel like I have to see Tuitt play in the
Right. Or
Hall of
Hayward
Fame
or
game,
most of
or
those
Hayward,
guys.
or any. Yeah, other than those guys probably making a trip because they would like to see the speeches and all like
Mm.
that.
It's a tourist
uh,
trip.
I would put them right back on the bus home.
Yep.
Really, uh, you hate to have any hotel room iron accidents.
Is there a joke
No,
there? Hotel room
no,
iron
there's
accident?
not.
Okay.
I'm thinking of the most obscure, unlikely accident to
Okay.
happen
I'm
in the
scared
world.
of that Tom Benson field. That grass has not been friendly to players over the years.
Yeah, but they have a new surface now, right?
Yeah. I don't want to find
Uh,
out how good that new surface is with TJ Watt
Well,
out there.
right, and that too is why I talked, after they signed the new kicker
Yeah,
Sloman,
Sloman.
that now, man, Chris Boswell, there's absolutely zero reason to dress Chris Boswell for the Hall of Fame game. Yeah, give yourself a full game at least to further evaluate Sloman. I mean, obviously the odds of him making the roster are well under 1%, you would think, but at least give you a chance. I mean, if you sign him to give your established kicker a little bit, take it easy on him. The Hall of Fame game is a perfect
Hmm.
place to do that. So.
Yeah, and as you've mentioned, it's we saw what happened with Sean Sweetum, years
Mhm.
ago, and don't want to repeat of that with the Boss, who's bounced back in a. Again, I just think we forget like how close Boswell was to getting cut and just falling apart, and so many kickers just because of the mental aspect of it just can never come back. And maybe there was an injury that he was dealing with, but still, the fact that he's had this remarkable turnaround and been so good the last two seasons, I think we forget what things were like 3 years ago. Let's see. Next question here. About 20 minutes left. Appreciate you guys being here in the chat. Really appreciate it here in the middle of July. I know there's not a ton going on, so thanks for hanging out with Dave and I. Maddox Gerald says, do you see the undrafted cornerbacks we've signed make the 53 man which ones, kind of the same question Reginald had earlier about what undrafted free agents could make the team. I think Shakur Brown is the most likely guy to make it, but a lot of times we'll go into training camp with one belief and one set of preconceived notions, and camp changes that with injury, performance, etc. So I try not to, you know, be stuck in my ways or get too locked in on some sort of bias or thought heading into camp. I think we'll just see how those guys look and who emerges, and go from there.
Yeah, and it goes back to what we just, earlier in this chat. I mean, I think Shakir Brown really is the odds-on favorite as we sit here now. It's really hard to see, a guy like Gilbert and all, but I mean, stranger things have happened there. When it comes to that. One, I think is a safe bet. One undrafted free agent. My money would be on Shakir Brown, maybe two, and I don't know who my money would be on. Would be in the second one. I don't know. Maybe Steiner, right? The safety.
Hmm.
I don't know. Might be a might be a good bet there. But if I had to put down a firm bet right now, I would say only one, and I would say that one is Shakir
Yeah.
Brown. But things obviously change in a hurry, and sometimes it's injury related.
Yeah, we'll start getting our answers pretty soon. Last Stylebender says overanalyze McFarland because he's going to get 80% of the carries this preseason. Yeah, he'll play a lot, and I definitely want to see what kind of jump he's making there in year two in this Matt Canada offense. Obviously, coached him, got coached by Canada at Maryland. No limit,
I
Kais. Oh, go ahead.
I wonder. I don't think he's going to get as. I mean, obviously you want to get in work, but I mean, I
Hmm.
don't think he's going to have 80%
Yeah,
of the work.
no.
When it comes to that, I mean, you got a lot. You want to, you obviously want to get Benny Snell a little bit of work. I mean, like it or not, you're going to have to put Najee Harris on the field some during the preseason. Obviously it would be kind of limited, but I don't think you can just go out there and get him, I don't know, 20 snaps the entire preseason and say, okay, we're ready. I think he needs a little bit more work than that. So I mean, I think you're going to see a plethora of
Ooh,
backs get work throughout the preseason there.
what are the day calendar word there? Plethora.
Plethora.
No limit, Kai. You've been watching the spelling bee when I was away, weren't you, Dave?
No.
No limit, Kai. Love the channel, guys. Keep up the good work. Thank you so much. Really appreciate the kind words there. I can't talk today. Maddox Gerald says, "Do you think bringing in Vic Beasley as a backup could transpire? I mean, I guess anything's possible, but he feels like just a pure pass rusher, and in the Steelers defense, they don't sub based on third down. It's a by series basis, and to play in Pittsburgh, to play the edge, you got to play the run. I don't think Beasley's going to hold up versus the run well enough to succeed in Pittsburgh."
Man, Vic Beasley. I mean, you know what? One of my when I wrote him up and talked about him way back when he came out, I kind of worried about ability to play to run and
Hmm.
stuff like that. And he's pretty much just a pure pass rusher. And even so, I mean, not hasn't been great. And the fact that he's trying to look for work now, look, I'd sign Alex for the minimum, if I could cut him with no guaranteed money involved
Ouch.
there. So, I never say never. I guess when it comes to some of these guys that are willing to take a minimum salary contract with zero guaranteed money. All that said, I mean, I would be barring injury. I would be surprised if Beasley was a guy. You got to set your sights lower. Somebody that can help you on special teams and somebody with more upside than on the back. A little bit younger than someone like that that's on the backside of their career with one foot already out of the league. They already have one of those in Cassius Marsh
Yeah.
anyway.
Right, right. Steel Pastor, much discussion about Chase Winovich, but if he were on the Steelers, would it potentially create some debate about Alex Highsmith? Dave, I know you've been talking about Winovich before. Everyone else was talking about Chase Winovich. What do you think?
About what was it? How was the question phrased?
If Chase Winovich was on the Steelers, could it create some debate about Alex Highsmith? I assume that's in regards to who would be starting in that scenario.
No, I don't see it right out of the chute. I would think Winovich would have to I think it would take part of the process of one underachieving and then one kind of overachieving. Look, Winovich I think is kind of what he is right now, and I think you obviously you got a better idea of Alex Highsmith and what he is at this point. I don't think it would cause any type of turmoil or anything like or indecision type thing. I think though you at least you set yourself up to if a guy like Highsmith doesn't maybe come out of the shoot good, then maybe maybe you start eating into his snaps a little bit. I mean, but regardless, if you got a guy like Winovich, let's say Winovich in, or even like a Ben Banagoo,
Hmm.
something like that, I think the plan right out, should be to try to get those kind of players at least 10, 12 snaps a game, regardless. You
Right.
know, out of shoot there. And then obviously, if they make the most of those snaps, then you kind of go from there. But I don't think if you talk about Winovich in particular, if for some reason you were able to acquire him or whatnot, I don't think it opens up the question right out of the shoot of, oh, I wonder if Winovich would start over Highsmith, those kind of things. I think Highsmith would have to kind of lose that role as the season progresses.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, they like Highsmith. They want him to be the guy. I'm sure when they drafted him back in 2020, when they knowing that Dupree was probably going to be gone after the season, that this was the vision and the plan that they had, that Highsmith would play well and take Dupree's spot. And I don't think Winovich getting dealt for in August would change that too much out of the gate, unless Highsmith struggled for the reasons that they've mentioned. But I think they're kind of similar players, Highsmith and Winovich. But Highsmith's the established guy, the guy they drafted, and just the guy they want to find out what they have in first. But Winovich would be really good depth, I think, to play either outside linebacker spot and be really good on special teams. Let's see. Question here from David Kapoor, probably more Dave's alley here. Bubby Brister or Mark Malone? I just one out of left field. I don't know if this means who's better, who's worse. Who do you want to forget more? But
Oh
Bubby Brister
man.
or Mark Malone? I guess Malone had the big 90-yard touchdown catch, so yeah, I guess maybe that's the more iconic
I don't.
career.
Bubby, I think if you would have had, I don't know, 6 1, half dozen the
Yeah.
other. I don't know. You know what? My wife always called the way Bubby Brister always spit. She says looks like he's spitting chiclets.
Hmm.
And if, I don't know why that reference always rings in my head from years ago, but I'm more partial, I guess, Bubby over Mark Malone, but it's something I don't really
Yeah.
spend a lot of time thinking
Yeah.
about, to be
It's
honest with
an
you.
era you try to forget. Mike and Dessa, are we still concerned about Ben's knee? You guys seem to be the only ones that talk about it, and I can't believe no one in media has asked him about it. He was asked about it, I think, during last season, not since, but he hasn't spoken to the media a whole lot. Seems to be that's more the issue than the elbow. Yeah, I think I'm more concerned about the knee than I am the elbow, to be honest with you. I mean, the knees are not going to get better, and they weren't surgically repaired, and part of the reason why they're an issue because they were surgically repaired, I guess, so much over the years or so, just scar tissue and arthritic and stuff like that. But yeah, the elbow I'm not really worried about. I think the knees are the big concern with 39-year-old Big Ben.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true for sure. I mean, look, either the elbow's good or not. And I think we saw late last season him make some good throws against teams like the Colts and on. Heck, I know it was against a prevent defense and yada yada, but people just don't throw for 500 yards in games. I don't care. I don't care if you're losing 53-3 or whatnot. Uh, he can still throw a football, and you would think that getting kind of his off season back to kind of normal, because he threw a lot of footballs, and he's talked about that as well too. That how last off season was a lot different because he was rehabbing, and normally during that part of the season he doesn't throw. Maybe to some degree there was some sort of fatigue, I maybe in there overall, but
Hmm.
either it's fixed or it's not. Is my opinion when it comes to that. Now the knees and the arthritic, that yeah, I think that's something to be a little bit more worrisome about. But I mean, look, this isn't a guy that you're going to ask to be Lamar Jackson on your scout team or anything along those lines there. And I was just watching. I just went back and watched some more tape on Ben Roethlisberger today, and specifically some of those. Uh, uh, Throws of 10 to 15 yards. And man, he one of those clips included him kind of standing in there and taking a hit right up the middle from the Baltimore Ravens. So it's not like he didn't get hit last year. It's just obviously you want to kind of limit those kind of legs tangling with legs kind of situations more than anything. But I mean, he's been resilient for the most part, right? Most of his career. So I mean, I would say though that the knees are more
Mhm.
worrisome to me at this point.
And to Mike's point, I think most in the media, especially the national media, have focused on the elbow and just they always say his arm, but power's derived from the ground up. And if your knees have a problem, with pain and stuff like that, that's going to affect the deep ball, especially, which is where Ben has struggled with quite a bit the last couple seasons. Let's see. John Pennington, about 10 minutes left here in today's live stream. Do you guys think the Steelers should bring in another experienced center? No, they got enough. They got three of them. They got Finney and Green and Hassenauer. I mean, you add in someone else, practice reps become an issue. You have three teams on the offensive line. So, no, I think you're good with the three you have and let those guys compete and soak up reps.
The only way I could see something like that happening would be once again one of those last minute. Oh, this veteran got cut. And would be willing to agree to, a post, something that maybe where the salary's not guaranteed or something like that. It would have to be a minimum deal, but it would have to be on the heels of you just not liking anything that you saw out of Green or Hassenauer or BJ Finney during the preseason. I would obviously bet against that happening, but if something did happen, it would have to be a veteran, 6, 7, 8 season kind of guy. I would think, obviously for near the minimum, kind of situation
Yeah.
there. And but once again, it had to come on the heels of just not. If they did do that, they'd tell you a lot of what they thought about what they saw out of the center position
Right.
during the training camp and preseason.
For sure. Couple more questions. Mike Adessa, who we got in the home run derby tonight? I know you have a few pesos on it, right, Dave? Dave, who are you betting
No,
on?
I haven't even paid attention to it, to be honest with you. I've been watching a lot of tape all morning and all like that. I haven't even been paying attention to
Yeah.
the home run derby.
It'd be cool if Otani won it. That'd be really cool. I'm trying to think of who's all there. I know what Matt Olson, but I'm gonna go Joey Gallo in Coors Field. I think he'll hit some moonshots. Let's see, couple more. Another one here from actually Mark Miller with a comment. I'll read that. I think Najee in the running game will give Ben the John Elway effect and take them deep in the playoffs. That'd be cool. I mean, Ben's we're in seven because of Elway, so it'd be cool to have that kind of Elway career arc to end things for Ben. I will take a Super Bowl to end it with Elway and Ben. Mike Adesso, week one. Who's your best guess as tight end three? Raider Gentry or a guy that's not on the roster? Cough, cough. Jesse James. Yeah, I wonder where James is going to land. I would certainly welcome him in Pittsburgh. Of the guys on the roster, though, because, it could be someone else on the roster, absolutely. But I'm going to give Kevin Rader the edge because he's the better blocker and the better special teamer. Really impressed with his cup of coffee in week 17 last year against the Browns.
Yeah, I just wrote up. I think Raider was Raider
Yeah.
and Dax Raymond this morning. That I wrote up in the 90 in 30 series there. Uh, assuming they don't bring someone in from the outside like a Jesse James, which I think they should. If they don't, you have to would think that this thing's going to come down to Raider and Zach Gentry. Gentry has just shown absolutely nothing as a blocker in his limited snaps. And what did he play? 20 snaps last year, and I think 50 snaps the year before. And a lot of those 50 snaps that he had during his rookie season, I think kind of came early-ish in the season, and he just looked absolutely lost. The thing that you were kind of hoping for last season, had he stayed healthy, was okay, get him some experience there. Let's see how he's grown as a blocker. I don't think we learned much of anything about
No.
Gentry last year. In He was inactive the early part of the season. That's not good from the standpoint alone that he couldn't even impress Danny Smith to get a helmet there on special teams. So that alone does not bode well for a third string tight end looking to make the roster. Whereas you talk about Raider, the better. Look, there was a time last season you could have made a strong argument, even though he wasn't on the 53 man roster, that Kevin Raider was your best blocking tight end that you had under contract there. And he did do a little something on special teams there, and when he was in the game that he dressed for there. So I don't think you can roll Gentry out completely, but I think you right now you would have to give the advantage, or at least I would give the advantage to Raider. Gentry would have to make leaps and bounds improvement with blocking and show
Hmm.
something on special teams. I think in order to make the roster.
Very important preseason for both of those guys. I think Gentry, especially. Gentry's not going to be an asset on special teams. He's big, but he can't move worth a lick. It's just not going to work there. Running down kicks and punts and playing in space. For Raider, I think, again, blocker, special teams value better, but the hands have to improve. He had 5 drops in 2019 in training camp with Pittsburgh and dropped his 1 target against the Browns last season. So, not that he's going to catch a lot of balls in Pittsburgh, but to have a good camp, I want to see him catch the ball cleaner and, get rid of those drop issues. Let's see. Hayden Smith. How many games will the Steelers win right now? That's the question there from Hayden. You guys probably won't like the answer, but and I lose the question just as a preface here. But I have this team as an 8-9 team. They could be 9-8, obviously right around there. But if you're asking me the question, I have an 8-win team right now.
Yeah, I'm right there at the 8.5 mark. I think
Nah,
it's
you can't
very
give me 8.5.
I no, I say I think it's understandable that that's why the win mark is where it's at. It's the
Okay,
8.5 mark.
okay, I see.
I think it's understandable there. Uh, I mean, I'll go 9, but twist my arm. It's only because it's only because I can't go 8-8.
You can't do the old Jeff Fisher.
Right, but look, I mean, until we have reason to believe otherwise, I mean, there's questions about what this offense can do, and there's questions about how big of a step this defense will step back. And look, they play in a tough division, and that division has a very tough schedule. You look at that 4 game stretch that they have later on in the season, man. Minnesota on Thursday night, then I forget the exact order. I think it goes what Minnesota, was it Kansas City, then
Yeah.
Baltimore and Tennessee, or so. Those are the 4 teams. It's something like Minnesota, Baltimore, Tennessee, Kansas City, and then oh yeah, after you get through that 4 game stretch, then you have to end the season. I think against Cleveland and
Hmm.
Cincinnati.
No, Baltimore at the end of the year.
Okay, or Cleveland and Baltimore
Yeah.
to end the year there. But uh, I mean, I I know people think that we should be rah rah. Everything's 12 wins or more every year because But I mean, it's just not the reality of the matter. I mean, can it? Can this team potentially win 10 or 11 games? Sure. So
Hmm.
many different
Sure.
things can happen during a season, and injuries on not only the Steelers but other teams happen. But if people want the way we look at things, or at least me right now, I say it's like a 9 or 8 win team. I mean, might my opinion change after I see and more throughout the summer? Yeah, it's possible. But that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, it's just it's a tough schedule. It's a tough division, and this roster, I think overall in some areas, I think there can be improvement, but I think overall it's not as good as last year. So they'll be competitive, and the week 17, week 18 game will I think help define and shape the season. But that's where I'm at, 8-9 team. They have to be better in December, Dave. I mean they've been so bad the last 2 3 seasons at the end of the year, and their end of the year schedule, as you pointed out, is brutal. One probably the toughest in football. So you better play better, December, January football this year than you have the last several. Otherwise, they will not make the playoffs for sure.
Boy, they better have some win stack going into. I
Yeah.
mean, it's and look to make it bad enough too is you look at the Vikings at least on paper. You say, okay, that's not that big a deal, but you're dealing with a short week situation there, and on the road at that, and that's not an ideal situation,
No.
and Vikings, I think, are going to be able to be a little bit better team this year, So it's tough, and as you said, the back end of that schedule, man, is just absolutely brutal for this team. Now, once again, injuries can change all
Sure.
that 2 weeks into the season, where you're going, oh, well, that game, look, even the Green Bay game right now. What's going to happen on Aaron Rodgers, and how much does that shape the complexion of that early season game?
Yeah.
And how much does it change the complexion of the game against the Broncos if Aaron Rodgers
Right.
ends up in Denver there, So I know people don't like those kind of answers this early out, but I mean, if they ask the questions, we got to tell them where we honestly
Hmm.
sit on this thing right
Yeah,
now.
and that's why I'm not beholden to answers, and that's why I don't scramble to give you my win prediction here in May, June, July, because all those variables that you mentioned. But there's the answer there. Russ has a different opinion though, and that's totally fair. Says Alex and Dave, you guys are surprising me on your win projections. I'm usually agreeing with you, but not on this. I think right moves have been made, and team will be better this year. Fair enough. We'll see. Let's get to just I think one more question I wanted to address before we wrap up the stream. This was also from Mike Adesso says Nikhil Harry, any interest? I say pass. I know Jonathan had a film room on him yesterday. Harry potentially on the trade block right now up in New England, but I have no interest. I think he's not a separator. Steelers have enough receivers. They don't need to add another. I'm passing on Nikhil Harry.
Yeah, unless you just got him. I mean,
I wouldn't trade
what
anything for him. He can have to be
I
cut.
mean, what are you gonna have to give up to even get a guy like that?
I mean, it's probably going to be a six or seven. There won't be much, but I'm still not paying that.
I haven't seen anything out of him that makes me want. The only bright side to all of it is he's still under contract for a couple more years, and then if you did have something to work with, you still had the 5th year option because he was 32 that year, wasn't he?
Yeah, yeah, he was. You're right.
Wasn't he 30?
Good call.
Wasn't he the 32nd
Hmm.
overall pick? But I gotta be honest with you, I was surprised Jonathan did a film room on him. To be quite honest with you, but not my. I wouldn't get up and cheer for something like that to happen. No.
Nope, and just no need, no, unless there's an injury, no desire to have, and plus in this offense, these guys have to separate. I mean, Deontay, Juju, Claypool, Washington to an extent vertically can all create space, and Harry cannot. All right, guys, that's going to wrap up today's stream. Appreciate you being here. I know it's July and there isn't as much to talk about, but it's going to wrap up here, or ramp up here, I should say, pretty quickly. I mean, the next live stream will be like 2 days before the first day we're going out to practice for training camp. So it'll start picking up here pretty quickly. I'll have more videos coming up here on previewing the season and a couple other things I wanted to get to before the season starts. So thank you guys for being here. Appreciate it. Dave Bryan, as always, thank you for being here.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for attending tonight. And tell your friends and peace and love to everybody. Have a great Monday night.
This will be archived on YouTube and on Steelers Depot in just a little bit. And be sure to check out Dave and myself on the Terrible Podcast tomorrow. So, again, thank you guys for being here, and we will talk to you soon.